This episode of Authentic Lives is in English. Enjoy!
I was working with individuals at the time in groups, and I realised that it wasn't the individuals themselves who were necessarily broken or sick, but it was the context, the environment, the culture, the society that was sick around them. And I became fascinated by, well, how can we change things at a systemic level? How can we love the system? How can we notice the system is unwell first, rather than focusing our efforts on trying to get people to perform in a broken system.
Hello and welcome to Authentic Lives. I'm Style Campos, and Authentic Lives is a podcast in which we talk about the intentionality of living authentic experiences. And seeking for experiences like this, today I'm having a cup of coffee with Jamie Pike. Jamie kindly opened his house to me, so thank you a lot, Jamie, for the possibility of spending a couple of days here in Bristol. He works with questions of human well-being and connection in a number of professional domains. He's a driving force within the Bioleadership Project, which seeks to change the paradigm of leadership by working with nature's rules. He also works as a mentor and guide, supporting people to bring purpose-led projects to life. Good morning, Jamie. Thank you for accepting this invitation for us to have this conversation. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and the stories you will share with us today?
Thanks, Tal. Well, I'm not sure which one comes first. So I was born in Suffolk on the east of England, on a farm, and I'm the youngest of three brothers. And my mum is an artist and she has a very curious mind and has always been very interested in what connects us and what makes us human. And she was also a primary school teacher as I was growing up. And my father is a farmer, a retired farmer. And I grew up in this beautiful place with lots of space around me and lots of love from my family. And I feel always very, very grateful when I think about the life I've had, because I realise how not everybody has that experience. So I grew up in a very privileged place, and I think everything I've done in my life has been the response to that in a way, because I felt very early on that I had a responsibility to give some love back through my work or through my life.
Can you tell us a little bit of how do you give this love back? How do you feel this? And what happened in your life when you feel, now I'm putting love into the things I'm doing and this goes to people?
So I grew up surrounded by theatre and music and dance outside of school. So we had normal state school, and that was fun. But then in the area where we were growing up, there was lots of creative extracurricular things we could do. And we, as a community of young people, got to play, and we got to express ourselves, and we got to experiment a lot. And that gave us a lot of confidence in trying out different ways of being human. And I went on to study psychology at university in Sussex, in the south of England, near Brighton. And at that time you were able to study your primary degree, and also you could have school courses, so you could supplement your degree with lots of things. So I got to study around altered states of consciousness and the history of theatre and cultural and community studies and all these different things, which started making me feel very interested in what creates healthy environments for human minds. And I actually found psychology quite frustrating because the study of psychology seems to make you want to specialise in, it pushes you in a direction. And my mind was fighting against it because I always find I'm more a generalist than an expert. So I like to learn about lots of different things and see how the connection points come together. So I got very frustrated with studying psychology, but then after some time away from study, I went back to university and studied a master's in movement and drama therapy, which was bringing together somatic things, psychology, theatre, mythology, mask work, ritual, and many different ingredients all together in a kind of very diverse thing. It was the opposite of studying clinical psychology, where you became an expert in depression or anxiety.
Okay.
So I got very interested in how to use different creative tools to support well-being in groups. I told everybody that the reason I was wanting to do this degree and the reason I wanted to train as a therapist was because I'd been given lots of love as I was growing up, and everybody was very suspicious. Because
what does it mean?
Because most of the people were coming from a place of a wounded healer, as they call it. So they'd experienced trauma in their lives. And not to say I hadn't experienced trauma growing up, but they were very suspicious of this motivation.
Which, for me, it feels a little bit sad that people were suspicious about you instead of praising this love environment, you know? You came from love and you want to give more love to people and help to create a healthy environment and healthy cycles. And it's interesting. And I'm curious, how do you use your power of love to bring more love towards people who are surrounding you? And how do you do this as a project?
I'm not sure. It's interesting. I've never framed what I do as that, like you have just said it. So it is interesting to think, is it like love giving love? And in some ways it feels like that. It feels like love, having loving intention and wanting to share positive loving intention helps other people feel good. But I think it's something about loving loving life, and then seeing that the systems that we humans live by are broken and are damaging to life. Is a motivation in some way. It becomes a driver. And so I think, just to share a little piece of the story, I came across a quote from somebody called Jiddu Krishnamurti, who is like an Indian philosopher, a mystic, who said it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society.
Okay.
And I was working with individuals at the time in groups, and I realised that it wasn't the individuals themselves who were necessarily broken or sick, but it was the context, the environment, the culture, the society that was sick around them. And I became fascinated by, well, how can we change things at a systemic level? How can we love the system? How can we notice the system is unwell first, rather than focusing our efforts on trying to get people to perform in a broken system.
So you understand, you have this vision that the system is broken. And how does it affect you?
My natural way of seeing the world, maybe, has always been, I've always been fascinated and interested in lots and lots of different things. So that realization, I think, gave me permission to learn about lots of different things and to learn about the connections between lots of different things. Because you can't heal community or systems or change people's mindsets just by focusing on a small part of the system. You have to be interested in the whole thing. You have to look at all the different layers, because it's the connection points that need to be reconnected or to be changed or moved.
This is amazing. So we talk in your life. You have many different interests.
Mm-hmm.
Like since you are in school and then you just go. Like I think curiosity is a good driven for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have curiosity and you can pursue something. You learn something,
Mm-hmm.
and you start to see things in a holistic view,
Mm-hmm.
and you start to connect the dots.
That's right. Yeah.
And what I'm listening is that by being able of doing this, you are a bit less affected by the system, this broken system that we are all living in, because your curiosity driven moves you towards something different, and then you don't pay attention to the sickness, to the pain, to the suffering, because you're paying attention to something different.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think that there's something about where you place your attention, for sure. Like if I really noticed that actually when I was in my early 20s, I was living in Amsterdam, and I got very deep in media, like global news media, and what stories were being told at different parts of the media system. And then you become saturated in this negative news cycle, and I actually became very I think I started preaching to people about what they needed to do, why they were wrong.
But can you contextualize, like when you say that you were deep into media, that means you were consuming or you were doing something?
I became obsessed with like what was Al Jazeera saying versus CNN versus...
Okay, you were watching everything.
Yeah, all of the different... I was trying to watch all the different news channels, like the Russian ones, the Iranian ones, trying to get the Chinese ones, trying to see who was telling the truth and not, and comparing them and looking at the connections.
That's so crazy. I cannot imagine this.
Every day. Oh. So like for a few hours I'd be like, what's going on in the media? And eventually, and you become very righteous. You become like, because you think you have some kind of truth, you're developing some kind of truth by looking at the patterns and then seeing who's telling what story.
Yeah.
So, but what I realized is you can become consumed, and you can become consumed with negativity, and you can become consumed with thinking you know you're right, and wasting all your energy on this and all your awareness. And at a certain point I realized, wow, I have to just stop, because my spirit, my capacity for giving love or for giving energy or for helping anyone was being killed by this pattern. And so I think what you're saying about awareness and where you place your awareness is really so important, especially now. I mean, that was 20 years ago, but now when every place in our pockets, you know, we all have these devices where we can consume media
and connect everything. But then this is important. I have two observations. So one is, when you start to consume this, do you know what made you realize that this wasn't good for you, and what made you stop? And the second question is, so because we are in a moment of the world that is really flooded about information coming from everywhere, that's in our pockets, in our smartphones, what would be your recommendation after you pass this, after you saw what this impact on you?
So I think the signal that I got was I was getting depressed.
Okay.
And so when you get depressed, I've always been lucky in the sense that when I get depressed, it's not for too long, and usually it makes me reevaluate what am I doing in my life. And
it's a good movement.
And usually then I have a reflex, which is to start exercising, which usually pulls me away from the bottom of the depression quite quickly. And I don't know where that reflex comes from, but I'm very grateful for it, because my depressions have always been quite short, maybe 3 months at the most in my life.
Well, this is great. So you can recognize your own patterns.
Yes, yeah.
and choose not to follow them and then just move to something different.
Yeah.
This is incredible. Quite powerful.
Well, I guess I haven't realised that. I'm not sure if it's my the way I was brought up or meditation or mindfulness, which I was a companion along the way. Like my mum encouraged us all to learn to meditate when we were studying for our exams at high school. So there was always a point of awareness through the dark times or through the happy times of like, oh, just keep an eye on what you're doing, you know.
This is great because then you understand both good moments. So, this is good, I can continue here. And also bad moments. Oh, I stepped into something bad. Maybe I need to change something. But I see like deep self-awareness and through meditation practices. This is quite great, powerful exercise.
Yeah, I feel like meditation has been a big support in that, but also studying, you know, mental health and
I bet there is something good in psychology.
It's quite useful in a way to understand the physiology and the like.
Yeah, how the brain works.
How your brain is. Why are you feeling bad? You know.
So my second question was about media, about consuming media. Since you realized that it was like difficult experience for you when you put like really a lot of effort when you got deep into, and right now in this moment that we are living, it's quite easy to get flooded by information from all the sides. So
yeah, so in truth, I don't think I'm particularly good at my boundaries with media. I still spend time most days having an awareness of the global news cycle.
Okay.
I don't ignore it completely. I feel like it's an important part of my systemic awareness to have a knowledge of what's happening in the wider world. But I think what's different is I'm very aware of the nature of how news media and how the spotlight of news media moves and where it's not looking as well. So like in the UK right now, we've been flooded with the Ukraine-Russia war for a long time, and now the Israel-Palestine conflict is coming in, and you realise like how not to attach yourself too much to what's going on. There is suffering, there's deep suffering in the world, and it's tragic, but like reacting to the news cycle in a kind of is not necessarily a good thing to be in reaction to.
Yes,
it's
for
more.
sure.
I hold it very lightly and at a distance psychologically. I don't like engage. It's more like it reminds me that we have a lot of work to do. It reminds me it motivates me to keep trying to influence positively systems and I think if I was to really recommend what I think I should be doing to myself, if I was to take my own medicine, I'd probably do what my mum and dad do, which is they buy a weekly roundup of all the international news press that's like a magazine, and they look at it once a week.
Only once a week. Yeah. So, this is happening. So you keep aware about the world,
but for the rest of the time you wouldn't do it. So yeah, I would say
you live in the present moment of where you are.
Exactly. Exactly. That would be the thing. But I think limiting the use of any technology is really important for us to develop a sense of connection to place, to people, and to purpose, like all of those things.
Yeah. To use technology as a tool, and because we are on the verge that technology is using us, and this might be a little bit tricky, and we don't realize when we lose control.
Yeah, I think that's right. We struggle to see how our attention is being hijacked.
Yes.
And I think there's more awareness than there was through certain films that have been made and documentaries that have been made about technology. But our biggest asset is our awareness.
Yeah, for sure. from this, what I think, I am in a Buddhist community, so I'm learning this. I'm in this process myself. And I think a big learning for me is that we really don't realize that we don't control our mind. The mind controls us. And it's been an exercise to make this shift, you know, to go the other way around. So for me to control my own thoughts, how I want to go in, you know, where I want to put my attention and my awareness, instead of letting crazy things come through my mind. And this is an exercise. I think you've been doing this for quite a while, maybe without realizing that you're doing, or not sure if you're conscious about it.
Yeah, I think it's surprising to me that we collectively as a species, a lot of us are so attached to the inner monologue in our minds as the ultimate truth. Like that voice is somehow a true representation of who we are and what we are in a full sense.
Yes.
And I think that is a journey that if every one of us was able to distinguish what our fundamental self was versus the voice that rambles on in our head, then I think we would be in a very different place in the world. We'd have very different relationships to ourselves and to each other.
Do you think you can do it?
Well, I think we're as a human race, we need to awaken to a deeper sense of connection to life and the cycles of life and the reality of life. Yes. And life isn't a story inside our heads, it's something eternal and mystical and beautiful and infinite. But it requires us to somehow quieten that inner monologue enough. I mean, we're still going to have our thoughts and our chatter, but we have to allow that to be quiet enough so that we can see what's really important. And that's a big challenge when our attention is being manipulated.
And what is really important?
What is really important?
Yes, what we have to see. Yes,
to me
in
personally.
Your opinion.
I mean, I value time and space away from distractions of capitalism, work and consuming. Like, I really think that most of the challenge for all of us is enjoying life, enjoying our time while we're alive. Like, I've always been very aware of how death is coming since I was very young. Maybe because I lost both my grandparents very suddenly in a car accident when I was a young boy.
Okay.
But this idea that we live forever is, I think, a cultural, certainly in England and certainly in the West, in many parts of the Western cultures, we live life in the illusion of living forever, and then death is a failure and a failure to be alive.
Okay.
It's like, and I think that influences lots of things about our culture, because if we really knew how short life is, we would not commit all of our time, awareness, our heartbeats, our energy to pursuing the same kinds of goals that we seem to pursue so actively in a consumer capitalist society. And so for me personally, I find I feel most happy and joyful when I can claim back control over my time. So I've always been a freelance. I've always worked freelance for most of my adult life, which means that I'm vulnerable in some senses. I don't have a contract.
You're not sure.
I'm not sure when the next paycheck is coming.
Okay, vulnerable in regards of money.
Yeah, vulnerable in terms of financial stability, you know.
Okay.
So a lot of people prioritize financial stability over everything. And maybe because of my privilege, in a way, my mindset has not been one of scarcity, because I know that if everything went south, if everything, if I got sick or if I couldn't work, then friends and community and family would be able to take care of me and I would be okay.
Okay.
So I realised that I speak about this from a place of real privilege. But yeah, having control over your day, in a simple sense, that's what I wish for. So I can choose how I spend my time. I can choose how I give my time, give my effort, give my love.
This is great. So I think what you're saying, for you to spend your time and your space wisely, it comes with this idea of your own choice and with freedom. I listen from you a lot of freedom, that you need freedom to choose, to explore, to pursue your interests. And then a conflict of what we see in our current times about financial stability, that sometimes this is what the majority of people are looking for. And because you have a good support network, this is something that doesn't worry you.
That's right, yeah. Yes, it doesn't concern me so much. I think there's an expression, what goes around comes around.
Yes.
And I've always lived by that since I was quite young. I've always felt that generosity breeds generosity, and that we don't need to think transactionally if we can live with that principle as really alive. You know, if that principle is really alive, then you're in this relationship of reciprocity with life and with other people.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's been really important as well, is trust. That brings trust.
Can you tell me a story when you feel this happen to you? Like when you give generosity and you feel you receive something back in return among people in your life. You said so before that you have the motivation to keep trying to influence positively the system. How this happened, you know?
There's two things there. So I guess the first, I don't necessarily have example. I mean, there's transactional examples where you give something and you receive something.
Okay.
But that's not necessarily what I mean.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, so it's hard to sort of trace the return of what's been given sometimes. But I think people may come to know you and how you are, and then learn to trust you as you are.
Okay.
And so I suppose the gift is trust from other people, that you are in alignment with you're being authentic in some way. And so I feel like that's because I do some coaching and mentoring work on a one-to-one basis and sometimes in groups. The gift back that I'm getting from people who want to work with me is trust. And then in terms of influencing systems, again, that it's very hard to really measure the impact of what you do or what you give when you work in a systemic way, when you really trust that you're trying to support culture, or you're looking at dispersed influences.
Yeah.
So it's not a linear process of understanding impact. You might notice that it's more like seeing a garden starting to grow. And with reference to the bioleadership work that we're both involved in,
Yeah.
Having just finished the fellowship, and I've enjoyed I've enjoyed supporting it in different ways in the last 5 or 6 years, is that there's a growing community around the world in 27 different countries who are placing nature at the center of their leadership and how they think about progress and how they think about projects and how they collaborate and how they give their love and their time and their attention. So I guess when I think about recently where I can see something growing in a good way, that would be the nicest example, the most satisfying example. And that's because of the collective effort of so many people, right? So you can't locate yourself within it necessarily.
For sure.
But you can enjoy the sense of like, wow, there's a really creative and inspiring group of people who are really committed to creating positive impact in their local ecosystems or workplaces, and they're talking to each other and they're growing stronger and they're growing more courageous. And for me that's like a very rewarding thing to witness.
What I feel from your answer that you are really humble because there are, for sure, there is the work of many people, but you are a huge influence in the ones that you are in contact with, and I put myself in this. And it's beautiful that you can see that it's flourishing in many ways. I would like to ask you, what do you think it would be, maybe something that you have already been able to see as a result of BioLeadership, the project, and what do you think it would be like in the future, in the next few years?
I think I'm still finding it hard to accept that I might be humble. I don't think I'm humble at all. It's interesting. I find that challenging, but maybe that's just my culture, or I think being in there's a certain amount of ego that goes with working in any kind of leadership position, or any kind of, when you put yourself out there as someone who's supporting.
Yeah, so when I bring the word humble, I mean that you are able to recognize that your work is just really a part of it.
Yeah.
And that you have many people and your eyes
That's very
glow.
kind. That's very kind.
When you talk about it.
That's very kind. Thank you for clarifying that. But I guess, what are the examples of flourishing and thriving?
Yes.
It comes down to the individuals involved, and it's hard to give one example because there are so many of people doing interesting projects. This podcast is one expression. No?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
It came within the bio, the idea.
Yeah, and so
inside.
What I love about working with the BioLeadership project, and actually working in any kind of coaching or mentoring role, is that my job in that role is to support people to develop their gifts and find out how to offer those gifts to a world in crisis. And for me that is a really I love my work for that reason, because I feel like I can support some impact, but by supporting people who are the pioneers, if you like.
Yeah, this is great. So amazing perspective. So you help people, I will try to put in different words and then feel free to correct me.
Okay.
That are a bit lost, that are looking for a way to express themselves, or that are looking to their own self-awareness, their own expression, and then to put the personal gift into the world. And so my question about this, how do you find those people, those kind of people? How do you spot someone in this position, or how do they find you? And then they know that you could help.
So the work that we've done together is through the BioLeadership project. So there's a whole global community of people willing to support projects through that. So I would say to anybody who's interested, check out BioLeadership.
Okay, this is good.
www.bioleadership.org.
Amazing. So I think this would mean that BioLeadership has really good selection process of people.
Yeah. So there's lots of useful contacts there.
Oh, yeah,
and
okay.
I think that's one community. There's many communities that are actively supporting new types of work, new types of impact, new forms of impact. And I think we basically can't do anything alone. And so we all need to find our allies, find our people, find our community, find people who are willing to commit themselves to trying to do things in a more life-centered way.
And what do those communities or those people have in common? How do you find them? How do you see there is something that makes sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I really trust that we know when things aren't authentic or aren't working well. So actually I think it's when someone's working in a big corporate job for a company that has on the surface good values but underneath is working like a machine to generate money for shareholders, and that is eating up planetary resources in the process. I think someone knows that, like, if they were to listen to themselves, they know. And then I think once you become aware of your position, or the position that your organization or your company or your political party or whatever professional organization you're a part of, once you become aware that the impact of that organization is not good for life, then I think you can find your people almost anywhere.
Amazing.
There are people everywhere who have that, who share that awareness. What people are missing is the connections, the container, the invitation to come together. And so a lot of different organizations exist in different parts of the world who share that ambition to be more caring, be more loving, be more kind, be more life-centered. And I think the only way for any kind of significant global shift to take place is we need 1 million different organizations, or 10 million different organizations
Doing their own thing.
Doing their own thing in the cultural context that they exist, in relationship to the places that they represent, with the sense of like sovereignty to those places and those people and their cultures. The idea of having sort of one set of global principles of how we should be in relationship to ourselves or the planet or to nature is a really bad idea.
Good. This is really amazing. Thank you for this, Jamie. I think I have deep reflections of what I'm doing, what I'm trying to do, and I feel quite empowered to keep doing what I'm doing. And I would ask you to give some final words. What would be your advice? What you think people could move, or if they are on the verge of starting a movement and they are questioning, they are in doubt of what to do. What comes to your heart?
I would say take some time to find some really delicious food. And to cook a delicious meal with that food, and to invite some people who you think might be connected at a heart level to what you're passionate about, and to invite them into a conversation about how you might work together or think together or collaborate, even just for the duration of that meal, on how to have a positive influence in the time you've got left.
Amazing.
I would say that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this. I think this is really inspiring.
Pleasure.
To start the day.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
episode was really special to me. I met Jamie because he was my mentor in the home circle in the bioleadership project. And then I decided to go to an event in Bristol, and he kindly opened his house to me to stay so we could record in person. It's really nice when this happened. And this episode was recorded just one day before my 34th birthday. While we were recording, his wife and another friend were preparing a little surprise party to me. I had no clue at all about it. So I think those are great examples of how small gestures fill life with love and kindness. In the end of the conversation, I was just feeling so heartwarmed, and the little surprise party was really, literally, the icing of the cake. I invite you to think, when you have this kind of feeling, who are the people in your life and those small situations that make you feel this way with your heart full of love? And also, when you are this person to someone else. This might be more difficult to tell because we cannot read minds, and most of the time people usually don't tell us about how they are feeling towards our own actions. Maybe this can be an invitation for you to share your gratefulness to people you feel like this. And remember to show kindness in all the moments. Be aware of your actions and put those love intentions whenever you think about doing anything. Share your feelings and reflections about this episode with us. You can find us in the Instagram at podcast Authentic Lives. And remember, your own journey of authenticity may begin today. See you in the next episode.